Everybody remembers Outrun, right? The classic Sega arcade racing game where you drive a Ferrari Testarossa down a road, encountering many forks leading to different places, and trying to reach the finish line so you could get some wacky victory celebration.
Yeah, it's on Switch, and we're gonna play it because I just feel like it. Also because I want to wash the taste from that last racer off that we played that nobody likes, and also to pay off a running gag that we haven't actually had in a good long while, so nobody's really gonna get it anyways, but whatever. Released in 2019 as part of the Sega Ages line of re-releases, Outrun is essentially an enhanced port of the 2015 Sega 3D Classics release for the Nintendo 3DS, itself an enhanced port of the original Outrun arcade game from 1986. And for whatever it's worth, short of the actual arcade machine with the steering wheel and such, this is probably the best way to play old school Outrun because it's simply a damn good port of the arcade original with a bevy of options that adds to the overall experience. So a quick rundown of Outrun for those who have never played the game before. I can't imagine who that would be, but in any event, you drive a red car down at tracks, and every once in a while you'll encounter a fork in the road splitting into two paths, each one leading you to a different locale, with the left side being the easier track and the right side being the harder track, and you basically have to reach the end of the track before time runs out, being careful not to crash into anything because that would be bad. Controlling your car is fairly solid and responsive, whether it be with the analog stick or the digital pad, whether it be with the Pro Controller or the Joy-Con, works fairly well, and you could customize your button mapping to whatever preference you want. So if you're not happy with the default setup, you could change it to something you're more comfortable with, which is nice. There's also an option to enable the motion sensors, which means you could use the motion control feature to drive your car, presumably with the Joy-Cons or with the Pro Controller. Haven't tried that though, because the last time I played a game with motion controls, it wasn't a pleasurable experience, so I tend to avoid that sort of thing, but that's a thing you could do if you wanted to. You can choose to play either the Japanese or the international versions of Outrun, which rearranges the track order, set your gears to manual or automatic transmission, adjust the difficulty and or time limit so you don't suck as much, and there's a bunch of visual options including display sizes, border options, and screen filters which all look like ass. I'm sorry, but they do. But that's not all this version offers. See, if you clear tracks and conditions, you'll unlock extra bits to customize your car and thus enhance your playing experience as a result. This includes a speed boost, better traction and handling which helps with steep turns, and some other bits. Neat little thing is that when you enable some of these options, it transforms your car with a paint job and little doohickeys added on. This is the closest you're getting to customizing your vehicle in Outrun, or you can just keep it classic and traditional, forego all the additional options. And eventually you'll unlock the arcade mode, which plays Outrun as it ran in 1986, with its comparatively janky frame rate and lack of customization, and yet it still retains the widescreen rather than force it back to 4:3, which is a bit of an oversight. Honestly, I don't care. The visual quality of Outrun cannot be understated. As an arcade title from 1986, this was a fine-looking game whose scaling effects were something to behold, even if the effects seemed a bit choppy at times. But with this version on the Switch, carried over from the 3DS version I presume, you got a bump in frame rate from 30 to 60 that makes the whole thing run smoother, which makes it look a little better in motion. Along with a widescreen aspect ratio that gives you more overall scenery to take in and admire, when you're not crashing into things of course. Of course, if you want to, you could reduce it to the usual 4:3 aspect ratio that the game originally was presented in. Now, playing this in arcade mode when you unlock it restores the comparatively janky frame rate so you could keep it classic and stuff, but it keeps the widescreen option if you have that enabled. Either way, Outrun is simply a beautiful looking game with some nice varied scenery to admire, and even the crashes are varied and well animated and probably well worth it if you're not trying to win a race or anything. So they've got the original 3 Outrun music tracks, Passing Breeze, Magical Sound Shower, and Splash Wave, and they sound the same as they did in the arcade original, so that's something. But they also added in new tracks that I've never heard before. Probably from other Outrun games, I'm not quite sure, and presumably remixed to fit in with the System 16 sound font, if that's the right word. but they're alright for variety, I suppose. I tend to stick with the mixtapes because they last long enough not to loop constantly towards the end like the old tunes did. The sound effects are crisp, clear, nothing changed from what you would expect. That's about it, really. Not much else to say there. Overall, the Sega Ages edition of Outrun for Nintendo Switch is a solid port, emulation, whatever, of the arcade classic, and probably the best way to play the game today. Retains the fun, classic, solid gameplay of the old arcade game, while providing you with some extra bits to make the experience even more playable or fun. Outrun in almost any form is a great driving game, but this Switch release gets the job done better than most. Definitely worth checking out if you haven't already.